Alrighty, everybody, welcome in. My name's Joe, and it's time for some puzzles. Puzzles are great for training those tactics, right? Some of those mid-game skills. But the nice thing about a lot of these websites is they have ways to tailor the puzzles to exactly what you want. So let's do the puzzle of the day real quick. I've just left it up there. I've already done this one earlier, so I know how it goes. But I'm going to give you a quick overview of my mindset. But realistically, I want to jump over here to what's called the puzzle themes. And I want to look at some specific end game training, because that's what I want to be doing right now. Is I want to learn and hone my end games, and let's take a look at how that works. But first, let's look at this. Feel free at any point in time to pause, figure it out on your own, and then come back and see how you did. So in this case, this is how I looked. It started out with my opponent had a bishop. He retreated his bishop, and my mind immediately went to, well, if my opponent's retreating, why is that? Oh, we've got a check, and we could have picked up the bishop, so retreating makes perfect sense. So now what do we need to do? Oh, that check still works. What's the follow-up? So check, the king has to move. Oops, can move to one of these two squares. If the king happened to move to the g7 square, hey, we've got... But then there's still no follow-up, because then the king can just drop back to the g8 square, and I really have nothing to do there. And if that's the case, my opponent can also decide, you know what? I'll just stick my king over here on g8. There's no threat of this bishop coming around. Which then got me thinking, well, change the move order. What if the bishop comes first? If the bishop comes first, there's no threat there, right? And I mean, it's just a bishop. Oh, wait. If the queen slides over, that's checkmate, no matter where the king is. So if the bishop runs up here, that king is going to go into checkmate no matter what. Even if the king starts running, we slide our queen over, and it's checkmate. The king has no squares, and nothing can touch our queen. So how would my opponent respond? All right, how does my opponent defend the queen on g7 checkmate? Oh, he just slides his queen over. In fact, he could slide his queen to a couple of different squares. Or can he? All right, so if I slide my bishop up, the queen can't come to f8, because then I would just take it with a bishop. So the queen has to come all the way to g8 to cover the g7 square. Well, if that happens, then we just pick up the bishop. Great, that's what we want to do. There is another, and there is one more way that my opponent can defend against checkmate on g7. He's got a bishop. All right, so we slide our bishop up. My opponent puts their bishop, threatening. But is it really threatening? Because what if our bishop just takes his bishop? He'd have to defend with the queen, which then drops, let me get some colors here, which then drops this bishop at the end of the day. Oops. So we have access to that. So that was the thought process, and I couldn't find anything better. So sure enough, and my opponent blocked. At the first time I played this puzzle, I didn't notice this, but I did notice that if we chase the queen away, if the queen ever leaves, right, if we do start trading things away here, we do have access to this bishop, right? Because what happens if our opponent slides the queen over, and then we grab this bishop? What happens if the rook joins the party? Well, we can slide over and grab this bishop. That's fine. So in this case, my opponent blocked the bishop. I can take my opponent's... Notice the threat of checkmate on g7 still exists. Therefore, my opponent has to eliminate that threat, so he has to take with a queen. I don't have to trade queens. I've got a free bishop at the end of that line. Honky-dory. So that's where we started. But now let's jump over to puzzle themes. And you notice I just normally keep it on this healthy mix. This is just a little bit of everything. And this is what it defaults to when you load up. But you can go straight here to endgame puzzles. You can go to queen endgames, rook endgames. There's all kinds of endgames you can do. Or we can go here to, which is kind of what I want to play with today, some of these checkmate puzzles, right? Mates in 1, mates in 2s, mates in 3s, etc. And now these are ways that I'm going to start looking to memorize checkmate patterns, right? I've been trying to study checkmate patterns, but I'm so bad at memorizing like how I'm supposed to see them. But if I can practice them in these kind of generic puzzles, then maybe I'll get better at spotting them over the board. So this is just checkmate in one pattern. So it's all I'm looking for is how do I mate someone in one move. I'm the white pieces here. Well, the rook is cutting off. Let's see. If we slide the rook here, the king can't go up the board. The king can't come here because we've got that covered. Can't come here because we've got that covered. So the rook goes here. The only legal move for the king is this way. So that's not checkmate in one. In fact, do I have any way to cover this particular square? In fact, what if this knight were to jump in? So this is my thought process. If the knight were to come down here, it's covering both of these squares. So let's get some colors on board. The knight jumps in. The knight is covering that and that. The bishop is covering these. The rook is cutting off all these, and the king is cutting off there. We have checkmate. So checkmate in one, trying to spot these things, and this is what we see. The first thing, we notice that the king has an escape square. Do we have a move that covers that escape square? Boom, checkmate in one. Let's go to the next one. Checkmate in one. Is there a mate in one in this position? Well, it looks like realistically the only thing we can do is slide the rook up. But before we just blindly make that move, let's look at the position. This is a great way for us to get random actual positions. Because if you look at up here, this game was played by these two individuals at a 10+0 rapid game. So this is a great way for us to see over the board. We don't know how we got here, but we see all of this setup. This is defended. The knight's defended. What happens if the rook comes here? Well, if the rook comes here, it's cutting off all these squares, and the knight's cutting off that square. Nothing can grab the rook because the knight's defending the rook, and the knight is defended by the queen. We're in good shape. So that looks to be checkmate in one. Yes, indeed it is. Move on. So these should be easy, right? These should be easy because we know exactly what we're looking for. Checkmate in one. But the goal is, because they're easy, we can use them as training. We are white again. We need a checkmate in one. Is there any checkmate in one? Well, it's a dark square, so the dark square bishop would be great, but that's a defended square. Not really a way to get the king up there. All right, but let's take a look. These two are covered. That's covered by the rook. This is covered by the pawn. So, man, what we really need is we really need this rook sliding up. Man. Which we can't do in one move. All right, change of plans. Can we move the knight somewhere? No, because even if we move the knight, that comes with check. I mean, that's defended. So let's slide the rook down, check. This is covered up, but the king can still escape downward. So this is a key square that I have to figure out how to block. Oh. Make sure we look at all four quadrants. I was completely missing this particular piece, because this piece becomes hugely important. Rook defended by the bishop. Now the rook cuts off all these and all these. And that's crucial because the knight's covering those, the pawn is covering that. We have boxed in the king, and nothing can take our rook. And there it is. Awesome. So this is the kind of stuff that I want to encourage you guys to try as well. You can really tailor in these mates. Let's do one more mate in one, and then we'll switch to mate in two, and we'll start looking for those. Add some complexity. So we are white again. The king is cut off. The king is cut off. This seems pretty straightforward that we can just slide the bishop up here and everything is defended. Boom. All right, so that seems pretty straightforward. So let's go back here and let's pick up mate in two. You could just go to random checkmate patterns, but that adds in some of these 4 and 5 move mate patterns that I'm not quite ready for yet. I'm not quite where I want to do that. So let's see, mate in two. So we know we're going for checkmate. Okay. First thought is there's a back rank issue. Second thought is I've got a queen and I've got a rook. I would love to eliminate that bishop, but my opponent can take with the queen on the rook, so just change the move order, take the rook. The only legal move is the bishop has to take, and then that gives us room for the rook. Boom. These are these mate and twos, mate and threes are gonna be, I think, really strong for us to really start to see some of these, because I miss them a lot of the times. All right, so we are white, mate and two, and again, I immediately see check, defended. Oof, no follow-up though. Check, defended. What happens if queen over? Defended. Change the move order. Check. Only legal move is the rook to take, and then this rook takes, and the queen can't get there. So change the move order. Check. Boom, we got it. All right. Again, we're white, mate in two. So here's something we have to keep in mind, is that especially if we were playing black in this position, by allowing the white king to advance so far, even if this was a pawn, notice that that covers. Now we have a back rank issue. But we can't quite get there, can we? Check, covered, covered, okay? Check, covered. Aha. Check, not covered. In fact, check, the king would, if the king goes this way, then that's immediate checkmate. Check, if the king comes this way, the queen sits on top of the king, checkmate, backed up by our own king. So let's try it. Boom, and the king went this way, so we should just be able to slide checkmate. Excellent. Let's keep going. Mate and two. Mate and two we're looking for. Mate and two. So we are white. We are practicing our checkmate patterns. So these squares are taken away. Taken away, taken away, taken away. That's also taken away. Those are taken away by that rook, so it looks like we just slide this rook up. Nothing can do anything about it. The only legal move is for the knight to block, but still it's too little too late. Checkmate. Covered, covered. The king is too slow to try to get out. All right. Let's try a couple more mate and twos. And again, at any time, pause and try them yourself. So we are black this time, mate and two, so black. Check. My opponent takes. Check. The opponent takes. That's not it. Change the move order. Check. Only legal move is for the rook to the bishop to take, and then the rook comes over, defended by the bishop. Check. There's no longer anything that can capture the rook. But the king can slide this way. So that is not it. Check. Aha. Check. That has to be handled first. So the bishop grabs and then the queen grabs, and now we're in business. So there it is. There's our pattern. Took me a second. Check. Checkmate. All right. Last mate and two. Last mate and two. Here we go. Mate and two. We are white. We are headhunting the black king. That's my first thought. Let's see what's wrong with that. Slide the rook up. The rook is out because it's defended. But then the queen joins the party. So rook up. Is there any squares my opponent could go to? No, it's covered by the rook. No, covered by the bishop. No, covered by the pawn. So this is covered by the pawn. This is covered by the bishop. These would still be covered by the rook, and then these would be covered by the rook as well. So the only legal move is to take the rook. Oops, come on. Take the rook, which gives us a path to the queen, and then the queen is covering all these, queen's covering all that. The same ones the rook was covering, except the queen also covers the whole. I think that's our move order. Check and mate. Boom. All right. So let's crank it up one more time. Let's go for mate and threes. And I think this is probably about the extent of my wheelhouse is mate and three. That's about as far as, sometimes I can see further. But again, these are puzzles, so we know that there is a tactic here. We know that there's something that we're looking for. It's going to be easier to spot these than it would be over the board. But if we keep doing these, we'll start to see some patterns. And if we can maybe see that pattern once or twice over the board, that's going to be tremendously helpful for us, right? That means that we win one or two games instead of, you know, a draw or a loss, letting our opponent get back into the game. So we are white. We know we're going to be going for a head hunting pattern. Check. The opponent could defend with the king. In fact, that's the only legal move. Check. Defend with the king. Check. The king slides. Checkmate. Yes. So I think that's the pattern. This is going to be a queen sacrifice. So that this comes with check. That was the crucial step, because if it doesn't come with check, if that just grabs a pawn, then our opponent could look at ways to maybe interrupt, maybe even sacrifice their queen back, maybe even move the knight out of the way. I don't know. Yeah, and then that would allow the bishop, move the knight out of the way and allow the rook to come into the game to help defend. But in this case, that knight is a liability. I wonder if this gives us the name of the checkmate pattern. It doesn't. I want to start. I don't have the names of checkmate patterns memorized. I wish I did, but I don't. But that would be something nice especially for some of you that have better memories than I do. It'd be probably nice for you guys to be able to memorize some of the names of these patterns. All right, so we are black. We are head hunting the white king. My first thought is sacrifice here, but then the queen grabs. I don't really have any follow-up. And notice that one of the dangers I have is at any point in time my opponent can simply make one move. If I make a nothing move, let's say I just do a setup, right? We're just setting up. Then my opponent can simply move the bishop out of the way, put me in check, and start head hunting me. And that could get ugly real fast. So I do need to make sure that my moves come with tempo. Check, grab. Check. Okay, hang on. Check. Notice these and these would be covered, so the only legal move is to grab back. Check with knight back up. The king has to move away, and then we grab the rook with checkmate. That's looking good. Is there anything else that we could do? Anything else? I don't see any other ways. I was thinking maybe we could get some kind of smothered mate in here, but no, the knight is not on a correct square to get smothered mate. The king is going to end up in the corner, so maybe we can end up with some kind of smothered mate like this. I mean, that's a great fork, right? That's a nice fork to keep in mind, and that's probably what I would do over the board if I was playing. Since I don't have these patterns memorized very well, I would probably go for some kind of Oh, but I can't get a fork because the queen would be there. All right, well, let's try it anyway. Yes, yes. And I'm pretty sure this is checkmate. Yes. Whew. Mate in threes, y'all. Mate in threes. These are going to be challenging for white. White. So we are white. We're headhunting black. So we have this triple setup. Anytime you have the two rooks and the queen lined up, it's what's known as the Alekhine gun or the Elyekin gun. This is an extremely powerful setup, especially in this case where the queen is at the back of the rank, because boom, 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 and then the queen is the one that's sitting there. And so if we look at what we're doing, that doesn't come with check. It comes with an attack on the queen, though. But my opponent can pick up, and then we send the other rook. And the queen picks up, and then we send the other queen, but then the king picks up at the end of the day. So it doesn't quite work out the way we want it to. However, what happens if we go here with check? Start the process off with check. Only legal move is to grab, and then we grab with the rook. The rook comes over, and then the queen comes in, and we happen to have the bishop sitting there at the end of the day. And I don't see any follow-up. Let me look. Is there any additional follow-up? Attack. Boom. The king could step forward. And then what? And then check with the bishop. And then the king comes forward again. And then we bring the queen, and that's still checkmate. Okay, so there are some options here. So let's try it. Boom, yes. Boom, yes. And I'm so glad we looked for this. Boom, yes. Oh, we don't even have to. Why can't the king come up one more? Because that's his own pawn in the way. That's not my pawn. That's his pawn that's in the way now. He can't move up. I didn't even see that. So, again, these are things that I'm not good at spotting, but we continue onward. Alrighty, how are we looking? Probably last puzzle for the day. We've done quite a few. Checkmate in 3. We are white. We're hunting the black king. Well, my first thought is immediately a rook sacrifice. Brings the king up. And then the rook over. The king has to move to either here or here. And then the queen defended by the rook. Ah, the king can't go here because we've got this covered. So these are covered. Rook up, king up. Rook over. The king now has to go here, at which point in time the queen jumps in, and the queen is covering also that square and these squares. I think that's our checkmate pattern. And if we look at this particular game real quick from this position, 2 rooks versus 2 rooks, 1 piece versus 1 piece, and the queen versus the queen. So this is a pretty even board position. The main difference being there's not a lot of protection around the king, especially since this rook has come all the way up. This rook would have to fall back, which it can't do because that... Okay, so let's go for it. Just checking the move order to make sure that we don't have any additional move orders. And then the king can't go to any of these squares, so we got it covered. All right. That was fun. I hope you guys enjoyed it. It's just a quick opportunity to walk through some of these. I'm going to keep my puzzles from here on out for a while. Not forever, but on just this generic checkmate. But one of the things we could look at is specifically looking at specific checkmate patterns, and this might be something we really sink our teeth into at one point in time, is just go after an Anastasia's mate or an Arabian mate or a smothered mate, right? Back rank mates we've kind of sort of gotten figured out. We know well enough. The double bishop mate I'm so bad at. I don't think I'll I think this will be one of the last things I ever figure out. The Bowden's mate is also a double bishop mate, and I don't really know how to do that. But anyway, so these are some of the things that we'll be looking at going forward in the future on some of these puzzles. I think it's something that's going to help me to, if I spot some of these checkmate patterns, maybe I can spot them over the board on early enough so that maybe I can drive my opponent into those types of positions, right? Maybe that transition from mid-game to end-game for me can come about if I see a particular checkmate type pattern and I go, oh, if only, you know, the king was in this position, or if only there was some pawns blocking off the king in this position, then we would have, you know, an XYZ checkmate pattern. Maybe we can use that as an opportunity to kind of shepherd our opponent's pieces into those squares that we want them in to line up for these kind of checkmate patterns. That might help us. Plus, they're fun. It's a change of pace to be able to have a clear tactic, a clear goal, as opposed to just looking around going, gee, I don't know what to do next. But these are a kind of a fun change of pace for us, all right? So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you like these kind of videos. I enjoy playing them. I'm gonna be doing them anyway, so whether I make a video for it or not, you know, I'm still gonna be doing these because I enjoy them. But hopefully you guys enjoy them too, and I hope that we both, like all of us, are getting better at chess together, because the better you guys get when we play against each other, like, it helps me get better too, and I think that that's fun for all of us as we get better together. All right, guys, I'll talk to you later. Bye.